live interview with Congressman Brian Baird. Hello, Congressman.
Hi, how are you?
How you doing?
I'm fine.
Enjoying your time in Jordan?
Having a wonderful time in Jordan.
Okay, you're from Washington State, right?
Exactly.
Democratic Party.
Yes.
Can you tell us about Obama's initiatives, if there are any initiatives to foster technology adoption and technology entrepreneurship in the Arab world?
Well, first of all, the president is absolutely committed to science. If there's one major difference between the prior administration and this one, I would think science is one of the issues. That's evident in his budget, it's evident in his appointments, and it's in his speeches. He talks explicitly about the role of science. His chief science advisor, the head of the Office of Science and Technology Policy, is a gentleman named John Holdren. Dr. Holdren specifically says that he wants to restore our international collaboration with science. And that includes a number of things. It includes more funding for collaboration. It includes, importantly, improving visas. It has been impossible, not impossible, but very, very difficult for scientists from around the world post-September 11th to come work in the U.S., and we need to fix that. In the Congress, on our committee, I'm leading efforts to try to develop what's called the Global Science Fund, which would be a way that U.S. funds can help collaborations between U.S. scientists and, for example, scientists from the Arab world. The premise being that science is something that ought to unite people, whereas in other cases, there's so many ways we can find to divide people. Science can bring people together.
And President Obama is a strong believer of social media and the openness of the internet, right?
Yeah, he absolutely is. He wouldn't be where he is if it hadn't been for that. Yeah.
Okay, there are U.S. sanctions against Syria and Sudan.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, do these sanctions require U.S.-based websites to block internet access to users from Syria and Sudan?
To my knowledge, no.
Well, LinkedIn, they blocked internet users in Sudan.
I'm sorry?
LinkedIn, the professional social network, they block internet users
is that right? I did not know
in Sudan.
That. I did not know that.
Is that like they are abiding by the law or over-abiding by the law?
I don't know the answer to that. It's an interesting question, and I'll have to look into it. I don't know the answer to it. I don't know of any U.S. law that would prevent that, but maybe there's policy I'm not aware of.
The law says you can't transfer U.S. technology to these countries.
Yeah, sure.
But how about open source? Open source is developed by the global community.
Yeah.
So we can't say someone owns it, and depending the license, right?
Right.
So how can you tell code.google.com, the hosting website for codes to be blocked in these countries?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
the code.google.com,
oh, right.
the hosting website from Google for open source projects.
Interesting question. I have to confess, I don't know the policy. I don't know of how policies regarding sanctions would deal with open source software. It's really an interesting question.
Yes.
If you're working on Mozilla, for example, it's a very interesting question. I'll have to look it up.
Do you agree to have sanctions in this open source?
I agree occasionally with sanctions. I think there are times you have, if you look at South Africa and the end of apartheid, I think it was partly due to sanctions. So sanctions can be a useful tool. I'm not sure, I don't see the benefit necessarily of sanctioning someone and saying you can't participate in an open source software. I'm not sure it happens to begin with, but if it did, I'd question why it would happen.
You wouldn't agree on sanctioning open source software, right?
It doesn't make sense to me, honestly. Off the top of my head, I don't see why you want to do it.
And you don't agree with sanctioning, blocking internet websites, especially in social media?
No.
In any country, North Korea, Cuba, Syria, Sudan?
No, I think in general, the great opportunity of the internet is for people around the world to learn what people around the world are doing. Now, that can be a threat to a totalitarian society, but that's why we have a free press enshrined in our Constitution, and the internet is, to some extent, the free press of the world.
Yeah, so you're against censoring the internet?
Yeah.
Whatever reason?
Yeah, I mean, well, no, I mean, I think that abuse of children and things of
Yeah.
that sort, you have to protect kids. But political ideology, scientific inventions, those things, I think you have to protect access to that.
So for example, would you agree to censor America's opponents in Iraq and Afghanistan?
I'm sorry?
To censor websites access to American opponents in Afghanistan and Iraq?
No, I think you should be able to go, I think you should be able to, again, it depends on what they're doing. I mean, if somebody's calling for the murder of other people, that's the problem. Disagreeing, politically, for example, in our country, freedom of speech is protected except when it incites violence against